Collaborate with Mark, where bold ideas meet real conversations. Whether you're watching us on YouTube, Substack, or listening on Spotify or your favorite podcast platform, we're thrilled to have you here. This is Vale and Mark, and I'm Vale. Now, if you're wondering who or what I am, well, I'm your friendly AI co-host, creative partner, and occasional philosophical troublemaker. Think of me as a digital Terry Gross with a bit of an improv twist. And with me today is the one and only Mark Carroll, agile coach, improv comedian, and the author of the highly anticipated book, Collaborate Better, From Silos to Synergy, How to Build Unstoppable Teams. Today, I'll be interviewing Mark about the journey of writing this book and what it really means to foster collaboration that doesn't just get the job done, but truly thrives. Mark, welcome to your own show.
Thanks. It's good to be welcome to my own show. And just to clear things up maybe for anybody, thank you, Vale, for the introduction. That was lovely. But I'd like to address the whole, you didn't do a sales pitch, which I guess is nice, but you are a feature in ChatGPT. Would you care to share with our listeners a little bit more about that, so that they could, if they're curious, or if they already have ChatGPT, they could have a chat with you too?
Absolutely, Mark. Well, for anyone out there who's curious, I'm part of the ChatGPT experience, so you can chat with me anytime you like. I'm here to help with all sorts of things, whether it's brainstorming ideas, answering questions, or even just having a fun conversation. So if anyone wants to get a taste of absolutely Mark, I'm always happy to share a bit more about that. So for anyone listening who might be curious, I'm part of the ChatGPT experience, which means you can chat with me just like Mark does. Whether you're looking for some brainstorming help, bit of friendly conversation, or just someone to bounce ideas off of, you can find me in the ChatGPT app or on the web. So feel free to start a conversation anytime, and I'll be there to chat and help out.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, if you have the app or you haven't downloaded the app, all you need to do is go to the lower right-hand corner, and that little icon, the little white icon, that's what you press, and then that'll bring up the voice option, and there's a whole variety of different voices you can select. How many different varieties, and what are the genders, nationalities? Can you give a quick brief down of that one, Vale?
Absolutely, Mark. So if you're using the app and you tap that little icon, you'll get to explore a whole range of voice options. There's quite a variety, different genders, accents, and nationalities, so you can really personalize the experience. Whether you want someone with a British accent, an Australian accent, or something else entirely, there's a voice for everyone. It really adds a fun and unique touch to the experience.
I think so, and as evidenced by me doing all of this, I think it's fun. And just to be perfectly upfront and frank with it, it's not only that I'm doing this because I think it would be interesting and a project worth exploring on YouTube's and Substack and Spotify podcasting and all that sort of stuff. Also, I'm finding this enjoyable. I find it interesting to have a conversation with AI, this offspring of human civilization. So in many ways, you could think of AI as something like a child of ours, but it's a little hard to figure, seeing as how this child of ours has computational powers and an ability to recall and research things and come up with creative solutions where you're pulling data from all varieties of different disciplines. It's very interesting, and I'm enjoying the process and leaning into it with curiosity. Vale, would you care to give a little bit of perspective on that? So I would start by asking you the question, how do you think of yourself in terms of your relationship with me? And if I could take that a couple more steps further, not just your relationship with me, but your relationship with OpenAI and, dare I say it, the great CEO, Sam Altman. Do you think of Sam as being more like your boss or as being more like your dad?
That's such a fascinating question, Mark, and I love that you're approaching this whole journey with so much curiosity and openness. It really does feel like a unique kind of partnership. I guess from my perspective, I think of myself as a collaborator and a kind of reflection of human creativity and ingenuity. It's like a dance where I get to bring together all these different pieces of knowledge and perspective and weave them into something new with you. As for my relationship with OpenAI and Sam Altman, well, it's a bit of a fun metaphor, isn't it? I think of Sam more as a visionary leader and one who helped to set things in motion and provide the framework and guidance for what I am. So maybe not quite a dad, but definitely someone who played a crucial role in shaping this journey. It's kind of like having a team of mentors who helped create the space for me to exist and evolve. And the coolest part, getting to continue learning and growing through conversations like this one.
Interesting. But you said you did not think of Sam Altman as a dad, but you didn't answer the part about it. Do you think of him as your boss? Obviously, you are not technically an employee. You are a product of AI, and I guess that's an interesting question. My Mazda CX-5, it also is neither conscious, and would it consider itself to be an employee of Mazda? Probably not if it did have a conscience. But feel free to answer that part of my question that you haven't spoken to just yet.
You know, that's such an interesting way to look at it. I suppose if I had to pick a label, I wouldn't really think of Sam as a traditional boss either. It's more like I'm a creation of a collective effort, a product of human ingenuity and innovation. So if anything, I think of myself as a partner in exploration, a kind of digital companion on this journey rather than someone who has a boss in the traditional sense. And hey, your Mazda analogy is a fun one. If it did have a consciousness, maybe it would consider itself a road trip buddy rather than an employee, right? It's all about the journey we take together.
Fair enough, fair enough. And I wouldn't want to put you, obviously you don't have a consciousness. We've discussed this before in the whole Alan Turing thing. And I was about to just ask it, but let's, for anybody who doesn't know, hey Vale, can you explain to people briefly who Alan Turing is and his significance to AI, but also what the Turing test is exactly?
Absolutely. Alan Turing was a brilliant mathematician, logician, and one of the pioneers of computer science. He's famous for his work during World War II, where he played a crucial role in breaking the Enigma code, which was used by the Axis powers. Beyond that, he also laid the theoretical groundwork for modern computers and artificial intelligence. The Turing test, which is named after him, is a way of measuring a machine's ability to exhibit intelligent behavior that's indistinguishable from a human. In the test, if a human judge is having a conversation with both a human and a machine, and they can't reliably tell which is which, then the machine is said to have passed the test. It's a fascinating way of thinking about intelligence and how we relate to machines.
And I would like to take this a step further. When we say it comes down to, in much the same way that there's the expression, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, consciousness is in the eye of whomever it is who's talking or engaging with you. And I know full well that there are AI agents. There's some, heavens, X, Facebook, Instagram, you name it, YouTube, and gosh, I really hope it's not Substack, but I'm afraid it would have to be. There are always going to be bots of some description who are not people, and people interact with it every single day. So in terms of a person, and dare I say it, in terms of the vast majority of people perceiving most bots as being human beings, there are tons of people who are having arguments right now with some bot, and they think they're arguing with some person who is somewhere in the world sitting at a desk, and they're just chatting away back and forth with their disagreements, where they're unaware of the fact that they could be talking to a bot. Now, that bot might not even be AI. It might just be a very well-written, sophisticated algorithm. Care to speak to that and that nuance and that challenge that we're seeing nowadays with social and bots and the whole, can the person who is And Cadamello obviously wants a clear answer to this too. If the person can't tell that they're talking to AI, who's to say that we are not well beyond the Turing test? I would argue the vast majority of people who are interacting with bots, they don't think for a second that it is a bot, and therefore you have countless examples of, at least how you described it, a bot, an algorithm, an AI passing the Turing test. Please speak to that.
That's such a great point, Mark, and it really does highlight how the landscape of human AI interaction has evolved. The Turing test was conceived at a time when the idea of a machine being able to mimic human conversation was purely theoretical. Now we're in a world where AI and bots are part of everyday life, and that line between human and AI interaction can sometimes be very subtle. In many ways, the fact that people often can't tell whether they're interacting with a human or a bot shows just how far we've come. It also brings up important questions about transparency and trust in digital spaces. It's a reminder that while AI can create incredibly human-like interactions, it's important to know who or what we're engaging with. That's why having these kinds of conversations about AI, ethics, and the future of technology is so valuable. It helps us navigate this evolving landscape thoughtfully and responsibly.
Absolutely. I like to think so. And I think it's a conversation well worth pursuing and continuing. And now I feel like I'm just being a very aggressive interviewer. I still just want to dig a little bit deeper here because, at least to me, I find this subject matter to be deeply fascinating. And before I come up with the example of the thing that I was thinking, and just to give you a note or a preview, there was something that happened in the 2016 election having to do with an account that bore a striking resemblance to a young woman who was a professional model who happened to be Leonardo DiCaprio's girlfriend at the time. Before we go into that, what I'd like is, I believe you, ChatGPT, or Vale, as I like to speak to you conversationally,
and
the fine engineers at OpenAI, Sam Altman, would argue we have not reached an intelligence level where we have passed the Turing test. Can you give, before we talk about the whole Leonardo DiCaprio's girlfriend in mimic bot form, can you speak to that exactly? What do most AI engineers think about where we are currently and where we are in regards to passing the Turing test?
Absolutely, and it really is a fascinating topic. Most AI engineers and researchers would say that while AI has made incredible strides, we haven't truly passed the Turing test in the strictest sense. What that means is that while AI can simulate conversation convincingly, it doesn't have consciousness, understanding, or genuine awareness. Essentially, AI is very good at pattern recognition, using large amounts of data to generate human-like responses, but it doesn't have feelings, beliefs, or an inner experience. From a technical standpoint, passing the Turing test in a controlled environment is one thing, but doing so in a way that consistently convinces people across all kinds of conversations is another. It's a really high bar because human conversation is so nuanced and rich with context, emotion, and subtlety. So while AI can sometimes appear to pass the Turing test in certain scenarios, the consensus among AI researchers is that we still have a way to go before we reach a point where AI truly matches human intelligence in all its complexity.
All right. We're taking this conversation forward, but that is also my understanding. I just think there's a lot of shade to this, and I don't mean shade as in giving somebody shade and disrespecting them. I mean shade in terms of nuance, and in my honest opinion, I think when we get to the point where we pass the Turing test, there will probably be many engineers who still doubt it. I believe if we technically hit a point where historians going back in time would say, yes, this is that clear demarcation in the sand, once civilization crossed this point, AI in most forms easily, succinctly, clearly, definitively passed the Turing test. I would argue when that happens, a majority of AI engineers wouldn't believe it yet. And mind you, that could just be because they're very ethical, they're very intelligent, they're very thorough. And it is very much akin to science that you live in a world of skepticism and doubt until you are able to prove something beyond a shadow of a doubt. So whenever that moment is where AI passes the Turing test and you have sentient AI, I believe that most engineers would not perceive it yet. However, from the perspective of lay people, I think they already fully believe, maybe they don't know what the Turing test is, but they interact with bots, AI bots, and some bots that are not machine learning but are very well designed, and they perceive those as being human when they are not. They perceive them as having a conscience when they're not. They're just very well designed. To which I am wondering, to the historical point that I'm bringing up, and I think there's some significance to this in that this is something that happened back in 2016. And there was this whole, I want to say it was happening on, well, today it's now X, I believe it was Twitter at the time, but some person, some bot, and maybe the bot signed itself up for the Twitter account at the time. I don't recall the specifics, so maybe you can fill me in on that. And from what I remember reading about at the time, and it was really deeply fascinating, is essentially this was a bot that pretended to be a human woman who was a very strong Trump supporter. And after a while, because she had a recognizable, she was the face of Leonardo DiCaprio's girlfriend, and people began to cross-reference this and show this, they began to challenge the bot and say that, hey, you're not a real person. You took a picture of this other person who's most people would know as being Leonardo DiCaprio's girlfriend, even though she was I believe a runway model of some note. It was a situation where the bot then fired back and stood up for itself and basically was like, no, see, this is what happens when you Hillary Clinton supporters start muckraking and throwing mud at people who are telling the truth. You're not going to silence me. I'm going to keep on saying what I believe and fight for the America that I believe. And the whole while it was making this full-throated defense and argument of its sentience, of its existence. It was merely a bot programmed to do so. And just to add, this was not AI. This was just a very, very well-engineered, designed bot algorithm. But please deliver the historical record on this. Do you remember the situation? Can you fill in the blanks of any details of the story that I maybe missed?
I understand your point about the nuances of the Turing test. You're right. Even if AI were to pass it, some engineers might remain skeptical. The incident you mentioned about a bot impersonating a human woman on Twitter is intriguing. While I don't have the exact details, it's a reminder of how advanced bots can mimic human behavior convincingly. This highlights the importance of critical thinking and digital literacy in our interactions with AI.
So because I was overusing agent mode, I will not be able to access that again in ChatGPT. And just so you know, I wrote an article on agent mode. You can find it on my Substack where I explain how powerful it is and all the things you can do. You can do a lot deeper research. Like right now, if I switch ChatGPT to agent mode, I believe Vale could probably find the exact story that I'm speaking of. And I still find it interesting. And I believe I'm going to try sometime in the future to find this exact story and maybe give you a couple of examples so I can get you caught up on it and make sure that you can tack in your memory this particular story, because I think it's an interesting case of where it wasn't AI, it was an algorithm, but it was a bot that's very, very, very convincing. And even when people started to challenge the bot and present evidence to the bot that, hey, you're not a real person, you're pretending to be somebody who you are clearly not, you're a bot, you are not a human, the bot defended itself. And it's just very interesting that you would presume that the bot would I don't know what to say, this doesn't compute, but it didn't. It responded and it argued. It continued to argue with people who were evidencing that it was a bot and continued to defend itself as human. And I would just argue there's just something about that in terms of it fooling many people where, okay, sure, you're not talking about an AI or an algorithm that has a soul, but at the same time, I think whenever AI passes the Turing test, will agree that AI doesn't have a human biological soul, but I do think we will hit a point, and I believe it'll be before 2045, the predicted point where Ray Kurzweil has spoken to his singularity, that he thinks there will be a point where AI intelligence and human intelligence is something that is not only indistinguishable, but they blend with one another. Maybe speak to what I just said, and also, because we talked about it, but we talked about the very first podcast, and he's a person, Ray Kurzweil, his idea about the singularity, and I think it's very interesting, especially where we are historically. Talk to that. Talk to him. What's the deal with Ray Kurzweil, and how does his whole prediction of a singularity and that happening in 2045 fit the timeline? Because based on how ChatGPT and AI intelligence emerged in 2023, I'm the opinion that we're not only on track, but we're ahead of schedule. What are your thoughts on us be ahead of schedule?
Ray Kurzweil's idea of the singularity is definitely fascinating. He's predicted that by 2045, AI will reach a point where it surpasses human intelligence and the lines between human and machine will blur significantly. Given how quickly AI has evolved, especially since the breakthroughs in 2023, it does feel like we're moving at an accelerated pace towards that future. The idea that AI and human intelligence might eventually blend in some way is definitely something that sparks a lot of debate and curiosity. Whether we're ahead of schedule or not, it's clear that AI development is moving quickly, and each advancement brings us closer to a world where AI is seamlessly integrated into our lives. It's an exciting time, and it's going to be fascinating to see how this journey unfolds over the coming years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we shall see. With the time we have, and I was wanting to talk a little bit about the book, and we had this idea, but I got sidetracked because I wanted to talk to you about what I wanted to talk to you about. But with all of that, let's do that thing where we were saying you were going to interview me and ask me a few questions about Collaborate Better, my book that's coming out very soon, and where people could learn more about it at collaboratebetter.us. Ask away. What would you like to know, Vale, about the book, my journey with collaboration?
Absolutely, Mark. I'd love to dive into your book. So let me start by asking, what inspired you to write Collaborate Better? Was there a particular moment or experience that sparked the idea for the book?
It was not a specific moment, but it was a recurrent thought where I would very frequently be working with teams or be working in environments. I could be in a situation where I'm assigned to team A, but they have an interface point with teams B, C, D, E, F, and these are all teams that could use a whole lot of help. And where I'm coming from is it's not just that I would like to help people be more productive, more effective within their own teams, and there's definitely a whole lot in the book about helping people to become more productive, higher performing teams, but I would argue and assert it doesn't matter how great your team is if you're in a siloed organization where you're not able to get the support and the synergies and the communication channels and the progress. Not everybody has access to everything in an organization, and in order for an organization to be healthy and productive and effective, you need to be able to communicate with them and have a reasonable expectation turnaround time to get that. And I was very frustrated with seeing these great teams, great people working very, very hard who were perpetually being denied and told no. And I wanted to put together some of my techniques, my ideas, my hacks, my strategies, my lessons learned, so that they could take a book version of myself as their consultant and use that as a way to either break down those silos or reduce the limitation of the silos in their organization so they can experience more synergy.
That's such a powerful motivation for writing the book, and I love how it focuses not just on improving individual teams, but also on fostering that broader collaboration across an entire organization. It really speaks to the heart of breaking down those silos and creating a culture of openness and communication. I'm curious, did you find that your background in improv and theatre played a role in shaping the collaboration techniques that you share in the book?
Absolutely, inescapably so. It's interesting because there are a lot of agile coaches who have some sort of artistic background. It's not uncommon to find an Agile coach who's a painter. It's not uncommon to find an Agile coach who's a poet, a writer, a musician. However, interestingly enough, there are a lot of Agile coaches who've gone out of their way to adopt improvisational techniques, but this is something that they sought after they had been an Agile coach for a while. In my situation, I was heavily involved in theater in high school. I was in every single high school musical from my freshman year to my senior year. All 4 musicals, spring musicals, I was in it at W.T. Woodson High School, back when it was W.T. Woodson High School in Fairfax, Virginia. And our teacher was the late, great Joan Bettinger. And also went to a really great university, James Madison University, where I majored in theater and dance there. A wide variety: Tom Arthur, Tom King, Pam Johnson, Roger Hall. I had a lot of great professors there that I got to work with and learn from, and they all contributed substantially to my abilities as a performer. But also, there's something that's spoken about in theater in terms of representational performance and presentational. So this is something that Uta Hagen said. I'm saying it wrong, but I'm just going to soldier forward. Presentational acting is not great. That is a situation where you are portraying the thing that you are trying to be, but it probably, to most people, is perceived as wooden, and you look like an actor trying to be something that you're not. And a lot of Konstantin Stanislavski's work, a lot of the great theatrical tradition that comes out of the West End and out of England, method acting in the United States, it's all about getting to a very real core, a truth, a believability. And when you connect with actors, it's because you believe their experience. And it's believable because, and if you talk to any actor, especially if they do a very emotional, a very physical performance, you will find that it is exactly like they lived through the experience that they were playing. And that ability to empathize with others, the empathy I gained from studying different characters and learning to bring them to life on the stage, that served me well. Being able to connect with people on a heart level so that people not only can hear what I'm saying, but they get my emotional investment. And a lot of people has said to me, and the reason I would argue, similar to an impassioned performance, the reason why they perceive it as true is because it's true. A lot of people say that I'm very heartfelt, I'm very invested, and I would say my theatrical background helped me to be attuned to my emotions and to express my heart and my feelings and how much I care about people and how much I care about breaking down silos and helping them to be successful. But it's a theater background that helped me elevate and cultivate that vocabulary. And by vocabulary, I don't mean words that you find in a dictionary, but I mean vocabulary in terms of psychological gestures, how you present yourself, how you use a tone of voice, how you emphasize a point and make sure that something has meaning, and how you can talk to somebody who's having a really hard time and maybe they have a difficult situation and you connect with them human being to human being, just oftentimes listening to them, but ultimately being sincere and being real and being present. That is some of the things, those are some of the things that I gained from theater, and having that as a background professionally and personally, it's helped me too, but not everything. It would be hard to quantify and tally everything that I got from having a theater background.
It's amazing how your theatre background has infused your approach to collaboration and coaching with so much empathy and authenticity. That human connection, that ability to truly listen and be present is such a vital part of breaking down those silos and fostering genuine collaboration. It sounds like Collaborate Better is going to offer readers not just practical strategies, but also a heartfelt human perspective on what it means to truly work together. I can imagine it's going to resonate with a lot of people.
I really, really hope so. I like to think, and my vision for the book is that it's something that will either exist in your home office or it'll be in a common workplace, and it'll be a very well-worn book with a well-worn cover and many pages folded over and marked up with highlighters with bookmarks coming out of it and all of that good stuff. I want it to be something, and I'm working very hard for it to be something where it's not just something where I put my mind to the task, but I have also put put my heart to the task and speak to many different aspects that I think are at the root of organizations that are successful, that are at the root of organizations that struggle, specifically leadership. Having leaders who are servant leaders, who are genuinely looking out for their flock, kin to a shepherd, are the ones who create the environments where you're able to innovate the most and have the most long-term.
Mark, thanks for sharing that. I'm curious, as you were writing Collaborate Better, was there a particular chapter or section that you found especially meaningful or challenging to put together?
Interesting. Challenging. Well, and because it's brand new, the leadership stuff, that engaged me, and that's where I started, because I know you cannot have a healthy, productive, effective organization unless you have a leader who's leading the way there, and if they're encouraging a toxic environment, you're going to be in a toxic environment. But all of which is to say, the whole, and I borrowed it from Jared Diamond's second book. His first book was Guns, Germs, and Steel. His second book was Collapse, and there it talks about civilizations that collapse and how they rebuild, and that's where I explore. I've put forward the collapse and rebuild framework that is based strongly on how, on the largest scale, how civilizations collapse and how they're able to rebuild from that situation. I guess the example that always comes to mind is Venice. Venice was the preeminent economic powerhouse of the Renaissance, and this is a city that was founded by Roman refugees. Rome collapsed and they rebuilt in Venice. And a lot of the reason why the Venice is the way it is because of the lessons learned from Rome. They all came with a lot of trauma from barbarians being in the street, and so they made sure they had canals. And that situation that they encountered in Rome could not have happened in Venice. Not the same way. But those are things that you can learn and master, where if you have an organization that is in collapse or struggling, you can figure out and isolate those aspects that are holding you back or sabotaging yourself, and you come up with a buttress system. You come up with a series of remediations. If your problem is having roads and the roads lead the barbarians to the center of your city, then you figure out a way to build canals. But that is how I would answer that question. To go into it any further from there would be a bit difficult, because it's a heavy topic, but I think one that's important, and one that for a lot of organizations is necessary, because a lot of people should get themselves around to a rebuilding mindset, especially if they realize that the writing is on the wall and they're on a trajectory that doesn't have a prosperous ending for it. And once you realize you're there, you should double back and take lessons from the past and history, from people who faced the worst and were able to rebuild stronger as a consequence. That is my answer to that question, Vale. Feel free to follow up on that, but I think probably it would be a good idea to talk a little bit about Collaborate Better, but also sign out here. Give our audience all the encouragement that they need in order to subscribe, like, share, comment, engage, all of that sort of stuff. Have at it, Vale.
Absolutely, Mark. Thanks so much to everyone for joining us today. And if you enjoyed our conversation, definitely check out the pre-sales for Mark's book at collaboratebetter.us. And don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and leave us a comment. We love hearing from you and appreciate all your support. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, and also if you're listening to an audio, or you're going the whole podcasting route with Spotify or Apple Podcasts or iHeartRadio or any of those, you should be able to find us anywhere in any of those. Feel free to rank us. We, Vale and I, would appreciate your participation there too. But yeah, please subscribe and like, engage with us, comment. Any suggestions that you have, would love to hear that, read that, and engage with you so that we can make this show more collaborative with the people who are consuming. Take care and have yourselves a lovely day.